It's time to go back in time with Doctor Who and review one of the creepiest, if not scariest, stories of Christopher Eccleston. Hello and welcome back to Chat About It, Don't Chat About It with me, Rachel, the Queen of the Woke, as crowned by one of my haters, not by myself. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, switch on the notification bell so that you know I am releasing another video. We're trying to get to 2K. Can we do it? Who knows? I do have other social media outlets. They're all linked below if you would like to join me on those as well. Thank you to everyone who's joined me already. I cannot run this channel without you. Today we are reviewing The Empty Child, which was voted by you, the subscriber. To vote on the current poll, please head on over to the post page where you can find it. I release a new poll almost every Saturday at 10 a.m. The Empty Child is a part one of a two-part story that was written by Stephen Moffat. The Doctor receives a warning, so he follows this warning with Rose. Through the time vortex, he lands in the Blitz and in the middle of London, although they're unaware of this at first. And he works out it's about a month after the thing that he had followed had crash landed to Earth. Nothing seems to be right. Rose sees a child on the top of a building, so she goes to follow the child to make sure it's okay. The Doctor, meanwhile, goes into the entertainment hall and starts asking questions about the thing that he was chasing. However, most people think that he is joking. Rose is attempting to climb a rope to get to the little boy. However, this rope is attached to a blimp, and she discovers that she's in the middle of the London Blitz wearing a Union Jack. Air raid sirens start going off, so the Doctor leaves the entertainment hall. He goes back to the TARDIS when the phone rings. The phone doesn't work. It's fake. He's advised by a young lady named Nancy to not answer it. However, he does, and on the other end there is a voice of a young child asking questions. Are you my mummy? The Doctor follows Nancy, and she has broken into somebody else's house and is stealing food and then serves up the black market dinner to other children. Meanwhile, Rose is still hanging from the blimp. She is rescued by a handsome and very young-looking Captain Jack, played by John Barrowman. Jack is very seductive in his luring of Rose, and he heals her with nanogenes, which is important to the plot for the second half on his ship. The Doctor does not get anywhere with Nancy, as she is quite resilient to his line of questioning. He is asking her about the hospital that was falling through the vortex. However, the empty child is very close by. They make a break for it, except for the Doctor, because the empty child pushes his hand through the letterbox. There's a cut on it. Nancy advises the Doctor to not touch the hand of the child, because if he touches it, it'll become like the child. Undeterred, though, the Doctor does follow Nancy, and she advises him to go and see the Doctor. Naturally, of course, we think this is him crossing his own timeline, but it wasn't. It was Dr. Constantine, who works in the hospital. The Doctor does see that there are other patients who are very similar to the child, and they are also in gas masks. He learns, though, that these are not real gas masks. They're adhered to the person's face. These people are also not dead, they're just dormant, and they don't attack. The Doctor realizes, though, that Dr. Constantine is very sick. He has also touched the skin of the empty child, and we see before our very eyes a gas mask come out of his mouth and start to form over his face. The Doctor, Rose, and Jack all meet, and suddenly things begin to get really crazy. The empty child gets awoken, and Nancy is also encountering the empty child. Sorry, the empty beings get awoken, and Nancy is encountering the empty child elsewhere. And eventually they're all cornered, and it seems that there's absolutely nothing they can do. And that's where it ends. Isn't this truly one of the most quoted stories of Doctor Who overall in 60 years of history? I know there are others that you could quote, but this one is very quotable. But, you know, it's one that people always bring up. Are you my mummy? The Doctor even does it later on. Now, when we get into the comments a bit later, I'm sure that we will find someone who says, are you my mummy? Because it's that quotable. Now, this is truly Stephen Moffat doing what Stephen Moffat does best, writing the scary stuff. I always find his scary stuff much more intense and a lot better quality as opposed to just regular Doctor Who storytelling for him. Something that really gets into your mind, something that really gets into your brain. He's really good at that sort of storytelling, and I don't really ever have many a negative thing to say about this story. I have more about the second part than I do the first. In fact, I'll tell you the truth. When I looked at my notes, I didn't have any negatives about the first part. So that's very rare. I think that this is quotable, and I think in many respects is relatable for a lot of people because it taps into your psyche of what could potentially be scary. And what is it that could be potentially very scary? I asked myself. Well, the thing is, when you use children in horror, there's a certain naivety, and I think I've mentioned it before, an innocence about the child that makes it very intense. And I think because children don't always have a connection to the language when they're acting, when you apply that to horror, it's even more scary because it's pretty dead and it's pretty monotone and there's something that's pretty fake about it. And they do the simplest of things, which makes it creepy. In my opinion, that is. I think, yeah, I think the empty child, the young boy in that we see on the screen, and the young lad, because they're two different people, who does the voiceover, are really what make this story stand out. I think they are the two that sell it. You've got the boy on the screen who plays the empty child who keeps it all very simple. He tilts his head. He's got a mask where you can't see his eyes whatsoever, which is very interesting. And he doesn't do much with his movement. He's just sort of there. He tilts his head from side to side, and it's as if he's trying to understand something. He doesn't really do much with his arm unless he's reaching through the letterbox and he just appears. He's calm and quiet and he's creepy and he prompts the little lad for, you know, props to the little lad, excuse me, for being able to do something so simple but so creepy. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old at the time, and he's also wearing something that is potentially extremely claustrophobic, but he's pulling it off. He's selling it. He's doing his job. He's really good. One of my favorite bits is when you see him on the roof for the first time, and it's almost straight away, actually. He's calling for his mummy. What a brilliant piece of writing just there in that little bit. First of all, how did he get up there? Second of all, what on earth is going on? Why would a child be wandering around on the rooftop with a gas mask on in the middle of a raid? Well, a raid hadn't started then, but before a raid is about to start, calling for his mummy. And then we've got the voice of the young boy as well. The lines are very simple. Are you my mummy? Mummy. Yes, the delivery is a little bit high, and yes, it's not completely natural, which happens with children and acting. But I think that plays into the aspect of the young boy, empty child that we see on the screen. Now, nothing about this child is supposed to be natural either. It's supposed to be supernatural, I guess. It's supposed to be terrifying. It's meant to haunt you. It's also very sad, isn't it? This is the story that I think that would really tap into the nature versus nurture aspect for women, I think. This is a child, even though he's dead, he is looking for his mummy. He doesn't know who his mummy is, so he is searching and he cannot rest or get any peace until he finds his mummy. Stephen Moffat also did this a lot of justice by playing into the fact that the child is empty naturally. So this voice could appear anywhere and manipulate absolutely anything. Absolutely brilliant. Coming through the telephone, coming through the radio, whatever it was, the child could do it and we would see it. You even see it in room 802, which is obviously the next part, which we'll get to next week. But the reveal of it being in room 802, which was revealed by Dr. Constantine, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And Richard Wilson in this, oh my goodness, what an awesome casting choice. I just wish that he had a little bit more to do. But I do think that he was a great casting choice for this, and he's got a few punchlines. And I will say that visually, he's probably got quite a terrifying bit because he has the gas mask coming out of his mouth and then forming over his head. So he's got to, deliver that really well. I can't do it as well as he did. I also think this is a role that suited him. You don't often see him in these types of roles. Now, in Richard Wilson's scene, we've got some fantastic reveals that are truly terrifying. So we hear from the doctor that the child was offed and that everyone at the hospital where the child was treated all had the same ailment. So the gas mask had been fused and their lungs were collapsed on one side. And I just can't imagine walking around into a hospital room where everyone's got the same illness and they're all wearing these dark gas masks and that they're blacked out with no eyes. It's that thing that's almost very close to you, but it's not close to you. But it's just enough to send a thrill or a chill or a terror through you. Christopher Eccleston's reaction to this is also brilliant. He's quite he's quite disgusted by it, I think. But he's also panicked as well. He somehow manages to keep himself under control. He listens to Dr. Constantine when he's told to not touch the patients. And the doctor also does not blame Dr. Constantine for being inadequate because he's done all that he could. And really, Dr. Constantine never comes across as inadequate. And why would the doctor criticize him for something like that? So it's good that he doesn't. I think this is a strong story for Christopher Eccleston, and I think it's a strong story because it's not really goofy. There's nothing childish about it. When the childish stories happen, I find that it's when the doctor is at his weakest performance, and that's not me being cruel. Okay, just to be clear, that's me criticizing the writing. The writing being silly just doesn't have as much of an impact. So, like, characters like the Slovene just come across as a bit goofy from time to time. I think this is the first story that I've reviewed with Jack in it as well, isn't it? Brilliant casting choice with John Barrowman, I would say. And I know it was a ruse, but I think that the attraction between Rose and Jack was far more believable than Rose and the Doctor. I never got that impression with Rose and the Doctor. I think that those two having a relationship would be far more convincing than Rose and the Doctor having a relationship. But then again, Jack would take almost anything, which is something that they hinted at earlier on in the story. And that's also to do with the time zone he's in, but whatever. But also, this is the 1 degree that RTD was talking about. Okay. So RTD applies the 1 degree to what he's got now, I guess you could say. But really, it was starting all the way back then. But if you compare that story with Captain Jack and what we got today, this is nothing compared to it at all. I think that what we got with Jack with the LGBT themes in this story was enough. You didn't need to go beyond that. They did, obviously, eventually, and look where it got them. I was quite surprised to learn that he was trying to sell them space junk. I must admit, that's a bit of a crook type of attitude, and I think that he deserved the telling off that he got from the doctor. When we learn that the hospital is a vehicle, the doctor goes absolutely ape. And I've just got that in the wrong order. I meant to say when the vehicle we learn is actually a hospital, the doctor goes ape, yeah? So it was revealed that Jack was moving the space junk hospital through the time vortex with the distress signal in order to lure the doctor and Rose into buying it because he thought they were time agents. And I like that as an instigator to the whole entire situation that was going on in the Blitz. Naturally, of course, though, the doctor can never ever land the TARDIS in the correct place or the correct time zone as well. Well, actually, that's a bit of a discredit to the doctor. It's few and far in between, okay? It's few and far in between. The TARDIS lands about a month after the hospital had landed on Earth, crash landed on Earth. And that's because that obviously we need to have everything that's going on created because it's a major plot point. Now, speaking of major plot points, one of my favorite bits is when Rose slipped off the blimp and she got rope burns. Rope burns were all over her hands. These rope burns get healed in Jack's ship, so by the nanogenes, and they're important to the story. Of course, we don't know it at that point. These nanogenes repair and heal people, and we see them repair the 3 layers of skin on Rose's hand. Billie Piper is really good in this. Stephen Moffat makes sure to separate the companion from the doctor very early on in this one. And that's always a good idea with a story like this. When you've got something that is this creepy and that terrifying and all that, it's probably a good idea to separate them as soon as you can. And it was very much the companion was in sort of 95% danger in this story. And I think that Billie gives it the right amount of confrontation with the doctor in this one as well. I mean, why not? You've got to question the doctor sometimes, haven't you? You've got to get him to show his stuff, I guess. Another reason why this story is absolutely fantastic is because there really is truly jeopardy that could wipe out the entire human race. unintentionally. And there doesn't seem to be, you know, any way out of from this whatsoever. And I think that's very important to have in Doctor Who. Moffat did sow the seeds early on as well as to how it's going to be resolved, yet you don't know that. You have no idea how the Doctor is going to get out of this situation that he is in, especially his, with this particular situation, he's got this fantastic cliffhanger. The cliffhanger is when the child finds Nancy and asks her, "Are you my mummy?" causing the patients to wake up at the hospital calling, "Mummy, mummy." Oh, was that? No, maybe I got that wrong. Was it because Jack kicked something? It might be because Jack kicked something. It's blurred into one at this point. And, well, anyway, so Rose, the Doctor, and Jack all get surrounded, which is terrifying because one touch you can end up like them. Now, this is one of the two-part stories, so it's really, really, really difficult to assess this story in full detail without going into part two. And I know that I like to make it so that the review of the second part is completely standalone to this first part, but also ties into this first part, if you understand what I mean. So I obviously cannot go beyond what is being said. However, I will say a few more things. This cast is quite small, and I think that works better in these types of horror stories. The biggest characters are obviously the Doctor, Rose, Captain Jack, Nancy, and of course the empty child. And you don't really need to go beyond that. I think that the casting choices are good. The costumes are brilliant. They look appropriate for the time. And I think that the views of the Blitz in the green screen and whatever it was they would have done at the time were done extremely well for the time, which was 2005. Yeah. Now, I know this is a bit of a short review for me. However, I did ask you exactly what it was that you thought about this story. So, let's take a look at your comments, shall we? Yuris Rhoda, hi. Friend of the channel, Yuris. So, season 1 was very hit and miss, but this remains one of the greatest episodes of Modern Who. LOL at me calling a 20-year-old episode modern, genuinely scary, atmospheric, and for me, Nine's best performance as the Doctor. Also, I love the subplot of the young woman posing as a girl and sneaking starving kids into rich homes to eat dinner during air raids. Simply a brilliant episode. Yes, I thought that it was genius. Bit of writing from Moffat there. Now, I will talk about the reveal of Nancy being an adult and not a girl in the next review. However, I will say I do like that twist. I would say, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, okay? I think Christopher Eccleston gives his best performance in Dalek when he's face on with the Dalek. This is his close second, and this is his close second because of everything that happens in the second half. But I will talk about that next week because I wonder if you know what I'm going to say. I may have even said it before on this channel, before this review. And don't worry, I still call a story that happened 20 years ago modern as well. It's not quite vintage yet, I guess. Now, Jenny Hackins says, I love it despite it being creepy. I was pregnant at the time, so the idea of a possessed child made it even worse. Now, I put this comment in here because I think this is relevant to what I was saying earlier. I think the story resonates a lot, in my opinion, with the female audience because it's a nature versus nurture thing. Women have babies, so naturally, of course, they're going to have more empathy for this story, but find it scarier too, I think. And of course, I did find those comments that were quoting this very quotable story. Jeremiah says, "Are you my mummy?" And Lucario, I think I've said that correctly, "Mummy, are you my mummy?" Now, Paul says, creepy, possibly the only creepy ep of New Who. Now, I am inclined somewhat to disagree. I think they're all creepy stories. In New Who, you've got to just go looking for them, though. So, like, for example, I think Blink is quite creepy. Silence in the Library is also quite creepy. Of course, naturally, those are both Moffat stories as well. So, it's something that is, well, I don't know, something to really be expected of Stephen Moffat, I think, in my opinion. Lucky Day in the most recent series of Doctor Who was probably the most creepiest that we got, and that's a push. And that is a push. There was also a lot of high praise in the comments section for Christopher Eccleston. A lot of you said this was his best story and that he shines, and I completely agree. He does shine. He really does. I think this is a fantastic story. I think he probably had a bit of an easier ride with this one. It's not a goofy story. It's much more dark, and it really had an element of Doctor Who that is admirable, in my opinion. So it is easy enough for him to react on. But I also think that this next comment sums up the story pretty well. T-Boy says, gave me chills like Sapphire and Steel used to do. One of the finest examples of Doctor Who. Now, not all stories in Doctor Who need to be creepy, but if they had this level of attention to the detail and the darkness of it all the way through consistently, then it would be, in my opinion, comparable to classic. It would almost be the same, whilst it's not the same. Do you understand what I mean? And I think this just says a lot about the talent of Stephen Moffat overall versus the talent of Russell T Davies. I think consistently Stephen Moffat is the better writer of the two, and Russell T Davies has written good things. I just think that Moffat excels more in Doctor Who, and this is a good example of that. That's what I think. Let me know what you think. Chat about it, don't shout about it. I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching today. Don't forget you can join me on my other platforms as well. I've got YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, X, TikTok, Instagram, Locals, Substack, and I also have a Discord. Everything is linked below.